Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Adrielle, and I am currently narrating a story of my life dating back from January 2016. In the previous episode, I talked about the two dreams I had where I was dating these basketball players, and I interpreted those dreams. Now, in this episode, I'm going to talk about all the other things that happened in the month of July. So, here it goes. So after the whole basketball dreams, I remember just thinking to myself, like, man, I'm really walking into my calling as a prophet. Everything had just seemed so clear to me as to what was prophesied about me in 2017, 2018 at the retreat. I was really thinking so much about those prophecies at the retreat and how I remember the man who prayed for me, he told me that, this is going to be a wild ride, like buckle up, you're about to go on a wild ride. And to be honest, y'all, everything I was going through, it really seemed like a wild ride. I remember his wife telling me that, you're going to put pieces together to help solve problems and come up with solutions. That's exactly what I was doing, y'all. The whole research with Caitlin and Brandon, I was putting the pieces together, the dreams that the Lord was giving me. Now, at this time, I'm getting like downloads from the Holy Spirit about what's to come, or just insight and everything. So I'm like, man, I'm really, in my calling as a prophet. So I remember just pondering on that in the month of July. So July 20, y'all, at this point, I'm kind of wrapping up the whole internship. I really didn't do anything, y'all. I was really going to meetings, basically, and reading a bunch of articles. Now, here's something that was interesting. In one of the meetings I had, which was on July 20, the chairman of the department that I was working for, he joins the meeting. This was my first time ever meeting him and seeing him in the meeting. He's in the meeting, and probably towards the end, he mentions how they're going to have this program with their institution, and they were partnering up with London. Once I heard London, y'all, my eyes just lit up. I'm like, what? So they had this tech program that their institution was going to partner up with London. So he was just talking about it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, Lord, is this my way into London? That was just a thought. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep an eye on that. So that was that. Now, y'all, I want to switch gears to Brandon and Caitlin. So on July 20th, y'all, I decided to check on Brandon and Caitlin. I decided to check on them. And I remember watching a story that Caitlin posted on her IG. And in the story, it was BB crawling on the floor on their, in their living room. She was crawling on the floor. She grabbed something that she wasn't supposed to grab. And I remember Brandon taking it away from her hand. Right? So Caitlin basically recorded that whole scenario and posted it on her IG. So I remember probably later on that night, y'all, I remember thinking about that particular IG story while I was taking a shower at night. And I was like, wait, hold on. Something is off. The scenery of the living room where BB was crawling and, taking that item, that living room looked very different from the townhouse. So I'm like, wait, hold on. I started thinking about the pictures that Caitlin posted on her page from early 2022, late 2021, summer 2021. I'm like, the scenery of their house looks completely different from the townhouse. So that was when I remembered Pink Book. Now, remember, back in 2021, y'all, I was getting emails from Pink Book that Brandon was changing his address. So I'm like, yo, they moved. But here's the thing, y'all. While I was in the shower, I was thinking, some of these sceneries that I've been seeing from all her pictures from 2021 and 2022, they all look different. So it wasn't a situation where they left the townhouse and they went somewhere else. I believe they went somewhere else after they went somewhere else. So it kind of came off as if they moved multiple times. So I decided, you know what? I need to do research. I need to do some housing research and figure out what's going on because, y'all, I just remembered Pink Book. It didn't make sense for Pink Book to send me emails that Brandon was changing his address. And now I'm seeing from social media that the places he's living in, they look completely different. So that happened on the 21st. Now, before I get to Brandon and Caitlin's housing situation, I want to talk about my dad. So July 21st was my father's birthday. He would have been, at that time, he would have been 64. And at this point, y'all, when it came to my father's passing, I could honestly say that the Lord gave me peace about my father. But then again, it was hard. Even to this day, y'all, there's some things I kind of just stay away from. So I kind of stay away from looking at his pictures, even though a couple of days ago, his picture popped up in my memory. And I was like, man, that's Dad. I kind of stay away from certain things that remind me of him because I just don't want to go back into that emotional state of, man, he should have been here. What happened to him should have never happened. But for the most part, I will say that God has given me peace. And to be honest, y'all, I could understand why God would do that because, y'all, with everything I was going through, I had to keep going. I had to. So it's kind of like God's way is like, hey, when it comes to your father, I'm going to give you peace. Okay? Because I know you need to get that in order to continue this marriage journey that I have you on. Because right now, you know, you're going through a lot. You're going to go through way more. So I'm going to just give you peace when it comes to your dad, okay? And that's exactly what God did. He gave me peace when it came to my father. Like I said, there were times where, you know, I'll get emotional. I try not to look at his pictures. And when I did, it would send me back a little bit, but I had to remember about God's peace. So that day, I remember reaching out to my family, just calling them about my father's birthday. And So back to Caitlin and Brandon, y'all. I did some housing research. So I looked up Brandon and Caitlin's addresses in Oklahoma. So this is what I got. I got the townhouse. You already know about the townhouse, right? Got the townhouse. They moved to a place in Oklahoma, and we're going to call this house the Yellow House. And the reason why we're calling it the Yellow House is because the color of the house was yellow. So they moved from the townhouse to the Yellow House. Now, based off my research, they moved out of the townhouse third week of May 2021. So around May 17, May 18-ish time of 2021, that was when they moved out of the townhouse into Yellow House. Okay. So that was my initial finding. Now, I was kind of confused because I'm like, why move? So I'm like, okay, maybe they moved because Caitlin was pregnant and the townhouse was probably just not enough space for them, you know, for 4 people. Well, I actually ended up finding the actual house of the townhouse. And it was a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhouse. I'm like, that's a lot of space. So I found out the Yellow House, how much room they had, and it was 4-bed and 2-bath. So they went from a townhouse that was 4-bed and 2.5-bath to a home that was 4-bed and 2-bath, right? So I'm like, okay, clearly they didn't move because of space. So I'm wondering, why did they move? Because if we remember in the past couple of episodes, I talked about how I believe Brandon's money was funny and things were not really where they should be at financially for Brandon. I started thinking, what if money was the reason why they moved? That was a thought at the time. So I'm still doing more research, y'all. I'm doing research, and my research is really me going on the internet, looking up their addresses, and me going back to their social media and looking at the scenery of like rooms, kitchens, and like dining tables and stuff like that. So I remember seeing the scenery of the yellow house. I'm like, okay, they moved in May 2021, early 2022, the scenery is the same. The scenery changed, y'all, by June 2022. I noticed that the kitchen that was in the house that they were staying in June 2022 was different from the kitchen of the yellow house. So that let me know that they moved again. So we're going to call this house the gray house. So they moved out of the townhouse into the yellow house, and then from the yellow house into the gray house. Now, peep this, y'all. Gray house is on the same street as yellow house. Yep. So let's just say for example, y'all. Let's say yellow house was 20 Summers Lane, right? Gray house was probably 35 Summers Lane. Yeah, I couldn't understand that. It didn't make sense. Why did Brandon and Caitlin move to a house that was up the road? Like in the same neighborhood, basically. So now I'm like, okay, this is beyond money. Some other stuff is going on. Why is Brandon living in 3 homes within 18 months? Y'all, to me, that was a red flag. It didn't make sense. I didn't get it. So now I'm just remembering Pink Book. All those times that Pink Book was sending me emails about Brandon changing his address. Yeah, because he was moving, y'all. Brandon lived in 3 homes within 18 months in Oklahoma. That was a red flag. Something was going on in that city. I tried to do some other research, y'all. I couldn't really get anything concerning the housing situation. But later on, we're going to talk about this housing situation. This housing situation is going to have its own segment because it really does play a big part in this story. So that's that. Another research I did was Brandon's working situation. And this was actually by mistake, y'all. I didn't mean to do this. The reason why I got to this point was because I was on Facebook looking at Brandon's Facebook page, and I'm just watching his fitness videos because I remember I told y'all Brandon's fitness videos had died down back in 2022. You weren't really seeing much. The last workout video I was able to see of Brandon was actually a reel. So that was, I want to say October 2021. And he had on a uniform. So I know he worked at that gym. So October 2021, he was working at a gym, right? So I'm on Facebook and I'm looking at the gym he's working out at from the months January 2021 up until May 2021. I noticed that gym is different from the gym he was actually working at. So that was when I was able to put 2 and 2 together and realize that, y'all, when Brandon moved to Oklahoma January 2021, he did not have a job. He did not get a job until July of 2021 at the gym that he was working out at in October of 2021. So for 6 months, y'all, Brandon was unemployed. When I saw that, I was like, what? That shocked me because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, for Brandon to not have a job when he moved to Oklahoma, that means he never really prepared his move to go to Oklahoma. He didn't really prepare himself. That was surprising to me. Now, on the flip side, Brandon was an online coach. He had his online coaching business going on. So I'm very sure he was making money from that too as well. But for him to not have a job for 6 months, I'm like, yo, what is going on over there? everything just seems weird about Brandon and Caitlin's coming together. And it makes sense that I'm, getting revelations at this time. But as I was getting a revelation, I'm just like, what is going on? Like, what is happening over there? So I stumbled upon that research, y'all, July 20 and July 2021. So after that research that day on the 21st, I'm like, you know what, I'm done. Like, this is just so much information. And as I'm getting more information and more insight, I'm kind of asking way more questions. I'm also kind of getting confused about certain things. I'm like, you know what, I don't want to check on him anymore. I don't want to check on Caitlin anymore either, too. So let me just wrap this up, right? The next day is July 22nd. And y'all, I just had this inkling that I should check on Brandon and Caitlin again. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be doing this. I really don't want to be doing this. It's honestly, it's actually getting on my nerves. I don't want to do this, but I said, okay, Lord, if you want me to do this, let me find a big revelation that's going to be just big. Let me find something that's going to be super revealing, right? So I said that to the Lord. I go on Instagram to check on Brandon and Caitlin. And at this time, y'all, I'm checking on them on the third-party website. So I'm checking on them. Also, y'all, I forgot to mention, when I was checking on Brandon and Caitlin the day before, July 20 and the 21st, that was when I found out that Brandon and Caitlin had opened up an online clothing retail store. And I saw the clothes. I saw all of that, what they had going on. I saw the business page. We're going to call this business 13th and More. So that was the name of their online clothing retail business, right? So I remember finding out that information. Anyways, it's July 22nd. I pray this prayer to the Lord that, Lord, let me find something that's super revealing, this big revelation about Brandon and Caitlin while I check on them. So I'm on Caitlin's page. I remember scrolling down, y'all, scrolling down to 2021 right after the wedding. So as I'm scrolling down right after the wedding, I see a video that was posted February 18, 2021. Y'all, after the reconnection post, Brandon and Caitlin had went live. Yep, they went on IG Live and they talked about their business, about their reconnection and everything. That video was over an hour long. Now, when I saw the video and I saw 1 hour, 11 minutes or whatever, I was like, what? These people had this big, caption, all these captions about their reconnection, and they went live again to talk about the reconnection. I was like, this is just excessive. Anyways, let me watch it. So I watched it, y'all, and I'm going to stop the episode right here. Next episode, I am going to get into Brandon and Caitlin's live. And let me tell you, y'all, it was very insightful. Very, very insightful. So if you're liking and like this story, please like, comment, and subscribe. And please share my videos as well. And until next time, bye.